Long ago, in a quiet corner of California, an old man lived on a small, worn-out farm. For decades, he and his wife had poured their lives into this land. They raised fields of golden corn, watched cattle graze under the sun, and filled their home with laughter. But after his beloved wife passed away, everything changed. His back, once strong, now bent with age. His steps grew slow and heavy, and a quiet sadness settled over the farm. His daughter and her husband had moved in with him, but the daughter he once knew was gone. She had become short-tempered and harsh, her words like sharp stones. Her husband was even worse, a lazy man who slept until noon and never offered a helping hand. The old man, with hands that trembled from a long life of hard work, still tried to keep things going, but he was tired, so very tired. One night, as he lay in his bed, he overheard them whispering. The son-in-law's voice was a low grumble. "If we keep this up, we'll lose everything." And then his daughter's voice, cold and final, cut through the darkness. "Father has to go. We need this place for ourselves." He felt a chill creep into his heart, colder than any winter night. The next morning, he was woken by loud thuds outside. He slowly made his way to the door, and what he saw broke his heart. His clothes, his old worn boots, even his bedding were thrown in a pile in the dirt. His daughter stood there, her body stiff, refusing to meet his gaze. "Father," she said, her voice flat, "you need to leave." He could barely find his voice. This is my home," he whispered, his words lost in the wind. But the door slammed shut in his face, the sound echoing the shattering of his world. He sat on that old wooden step, watching the sun dip below the horizon, tears tracing paths down his weathered cheeks. What his daughter and her husband never knew was that for years, he and his wife had saved every spare coin. They had hidden their life savings in an old stone box, tucked away near the barn. That night, under a sky full of silent stars, he found it. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to start over. He walked until he reached the next town. A kind farming family recognized him from the market days. They saw the sorrow in his eyes and immediately welcomed him into their home, offering him a warm meal and a soft bed. The next morning, with a flicker of hope in his heart, he asked, "Is there any land for sale around here?" As it turned out, there was. A good piece of land, not too far away. He bought it. With the help of his new, kind neighbors, a sturdy wooden house rose from the ground. He planted corn, its green shoots reaching for the sun. He raised chickens that clucked happily in the yard. Slowly, peacefully, he rebuilt his life. A young boy from the farm next door would often visit, helping with chores without ever being asked. He was respectful and gentle, like the son the old man had never had. Meanwhile, back at the old farm, his daughter and her husband slid deeper into misery. The house began to crumble. Weeds choked the garden where flowers once bloomed. Their days were filled not with work, but with bitter arguments. They were so sure the old man had left with nothing but the clothes on his back. They never once thought about where he might have gone. One day, desperate for work, the son-in-law traveled farther than he ever had before. He came across a beautiful, thriving farm and decided to knock on the door, hoping for a job. The door opened, and standing before him, calm and steady, was the old man. "You?" the son-in-law stuttered, his face pale with shock. "Yes," the old man replied softly. The son-in-law, humbled and desperate, begged for a job. The old man agreed, but with one condition. "You must never tell my daughter that this farm belongs to me." The son-in-law nodded quickly, his voice a whisper. "I promise." He worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. The old man was a fair boss, never harsh, never cruel. Every now and then, he would ask a simple question. "How is my daughter?" And every time the son-in-law would lie, "She's doing fine," he'd say, even as he knew she was miserable. But secrets rarely stay buried. One morning, the daughter, suspicious of her husband's long absences, followed him. She saw the grand farm, the healthy crops, the well-kept fences, and then, she saw him, her father, standing tall in the yard. Rage twisted her face. "You had all this while I suffered," she shrieked. The old man looked at her, his expression calm. "When you finish shouting," he said, "we can talk." She didn't want to talk. She wanted money, property, anything she could get her hands on. He listened to her demands, then gave her a few coins, just enough for her to leave, and then, he quietly closed the door. They spent the money in a flash, and soon, they even sold their own crumbling home. They were certain that once the old man passed away, they would inherit his beautiful new farm. But the old man had already made his choice. He sat down and wrote his will, his hand steady. "My farm, and everything I own, belongs to the boy who stood by me when I had no one. My daughter will receive nothing." When the old man finally passed away, the entire village mourned him and buried him with honor. His daughter and her husband rushed to the farm, ready to claim their inheritance. But the neighbors met them at the gate and told them the truth. Everything now belonged to the kind young boy. Defeated and consumed by a shame they could not escape, they left the village. No one ever saw them again. This story teaches us a powerful lesson. Even when the people you love push you aside, you have the power to rise again. Your worth is not defined by those who mistreat you. With courage, dignity, and self-respect, you can rebuild your life from the ashes. Kindness builds worlds. Greed destroys them. Choose your path and walk it with pride. Thank you for listening.